this special Performance and Overview Scrutiny Committee meeting on Tuesday the 8th of October. Welcome to everyone who's online or in the chamber, and in particular to anybody who may be watching either on a live stream or a recorded version of this meeting. You're extremely welcome, and today what we're focusing on is very much about people and individuals, and how the County Council relates to those who require support in social care and health. It's a big switch from what we were looking at yesterday, which was very much about finance and numbers and the overall performance of services and the county in regard to, and the County Council in regard to that. Today is it really bears very much more down on well, okay, how do our services in health and social care relate to individuals? And it's extremely important, of course, that we don't forget that we're dealing with individuals. Every one of the people that we support has their own particular individual needs, and that's something that I think comes through very strongly in the reports. So we'll be looking at 3 separate reports. Each of them is in its own right extremely important, and we'll break the meeting down into those three sections. But we'll start, first of all, with any apologies for absence. Robert, have we received any?
None for today, no.
That's great. It's good to have another full house. And any declarations of interest? I'm not aware of any at all at this stage, Robert?
No, not at this stage, Chair, no.
Great. So I welcome to the meeting the Cabinet Member, Councillor Ian Chandler. Thank you for coming to the meeting, Councillor Chandler, and also to the officers who will introduce themselves as they move into their first responses to questions or to the first opportunity to speak. We'll start first of all by looking at item 3, the development of children's placement policy, which has got a great deal of really important information about development and progress in a number of areas. But first of all, perhaps Councillor Chandler, you'd like to introduce this report.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to everybody for coming here and for the interest you're showing. So this is first report on children's residential placements and first 16+ supported accommodation placements. I think it's a very important part of our development of children's services to improve the care that we provide to the children we're looking after, and particularly making sure that we can look after them close to home, within the county, close to the communities that they know, the places that they know, and hopefully give them much better longer-term outcomes from their care. So this is a very important development in our children's services, and this is a progress report to show what progress we're making in that. And I'm going to hand over to colleagues here, so Jane Rogers, who's Chief Officer for Social Care, and Diane Chorister, who's Head of Children's Services. So I think, Jane, you're going to start off. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Chandler. And I'm going to keep this very brief by way of introducing the report. Members may be aware that back in April we brought into Council a strategy for how we were going to set about developing increased residential and supported accommodation provision for our children who are looked after. We had a couple of really key drivers for that. Firstly, the policy direction of the Welsh Government and their ambition to eliminate profit from the care of children who are looked after. And secondly, because we strongly believed it was the right thing to do. We had numbers of children who we couldn't find the best placement for them, very intense competition around finding placements for children because of an insufficiency nationally of available placements, both in fostering and in residential. And as Councillor Chandler said, you know, we want to make sure that we've got under our own steam the right placements for children that are close to their homes and community and are within, wherever possible, the county of Monmouthshire. So we've set about trying to sort of develop those placements, The report in front of you concentrates purely on the residential and supported accommodation placements. That's within the context of a wider agenda around developing all placements, which should include fostering, but this is specifically about the progress around residential and supported accommodation. And the report sets out our original ambition and where we've made some progress. These are big developments, as you can imagine, but the timelines are within the report. There's one where we've slipped on some of the timelines. The other two, although they take time, are being delivered within the original timeframes as set out. So I hope that's sufficient by way of introduction. I think the important thing is just to get into some of the discussion and the questions, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Jane, and absolutely it's okay. We work on the assumption that members of the committee have read the report, and so we'll very much work from that. So we have a combination of members from the People Committee, who it's great to see joining our committee today, and thank you for doing so. So we'll be looking at questions. It would be perhaps very helpful if you, because we have an unusual combination of councillors from different committees, if you, for the first time you speak, if you introduce yourself, that would be very helpful. Thank you. And it's worth noting that the job we've got today is to scrutinise the progress made against the objectives of the strategy report that was presented to the Council in April. And one of the drivers, I think, Jane, that you've just referred to is change that's been required of local authorities in Wales, where I think in the report it makes it clear that it will be illegal to place children with a private provider after April 2027. I believe that's the case, so that might be some useful context for any resident who would be looking at this. So it's very much to questions now, and the first hand up that I see is from Councillor Howarth.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you, Cabinet Member, for the report and presentation from a senior officer there. Just a quick question, Chair, just as reference to the test for public disclosure. It says in the report reference to what we're doing in trying to find accommodation, etc. And it's evident within the report that actually it's a public domain now that we have been carrying out consultation within communities reference to some of the places that we've been looking at. Could we just put to the test really that other places that are being sought also, would we be open to a challenge if we don't public consultation on them also before we make the decision in moving forward on direction? I think it's just a public test for me in making sure that we are public domain as a scrutiny committee, and it's saying that we are confined within the realms that we can't go public on some of the items. I just want to put that to the test, really, Chair, that we're carrying out our proper due diligence, and our auditors would be happy with what we're doing here. Thank you, Chair.
So I'm just trying to be clear, Councillor Harth, what your question is. Is it in relation to specifically named locations, or is it in the general approach that is being taken to consult in regards within communities to locations or future locations that are selected for residential care? Broadly speaking, if it's in the public domain, then it's that's an accepted position, then that would be something that you could speak to. However, if the report itself does not make reference to any particular named people or locations, it would be better for us to work within that particular approach. So I'm not sure why there would be any particular difficulty in regard to this.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, Chair, really, that we are public, if we go into closed session, i.e. we don't name places, I think the reason behind that is maybe negotiations taking place for purchases, etc. But then it's come evident that actually places in parts of the county are evidently based that we are in negotiations with them places and public consultation has taken place. satisfaction for me is when other places become available, that consultation would take place also, making before we make the decision that we've carried out due diligence. I just want the officers making sure that that does happen. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hart. Councillor Chandler, I see you're looking to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted, for the avoidance of doubt, just to make a bit of clarification on this. So when we're looking to acquire or repurpose a property, we're not engaging in a public consultation in that area in regards to that particular requirement. It is a matter of normal practice, as you said, that any local authority doesn't publish and publicise the locations of its children's homes. That's for safeguarding purposes and for the welfare of the children concerned. When it comes to the purchasing positions, what we've done and what we would continue to do is we will consult with local elected members in the wards or in the areas where those are happening to get their input, but we're not engaging in a public consultation about any individual purchases. That's an operational decision. It wouldn't be appropriate, I think, to engage people in that. What we are consulting, and I think this is where Councillor Howarth may be thinking about, is that once we've acquired the property and we're looking to develop it and to open it, with the immediate neighbours of that property, we are holding engagement sessions with that because we want to be good neighbours and we want to help get them on board. And that's a successful process that us and other local authorities do and have done in the past. It's just about how we establish a home in a residential neighbourhood, because we want the children we're looking after to be in a normal residential neighbourhood with other families in their communities. So that's what we're hoping to achieve with that. So I just wanted to make sure that was absolutely clear in terms of where we're consulting and where we're not consulting.
Councillor Hart, are you content? And we can move on to other questions?
Yeah, I think that's been clearly explained, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Did you have another question before I move on?
No, I'm fine, Chair.
Great, thank you. So it's Councillor Howells next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers. Thank you for bringing this update on the progress of the children's residential placements. Just one question from me, really, and I'm sure you probably share these frustrations in the delay on some of the work that's been done. And there's the Caldecott one is almost open, so November, December, which is great news. Monmouth, we're looking at April, and I appreciate in the report there has been a delay, but is there any hope of that being brought forward? Because it's a good 6 months away, that is. And finally, just in Caldecott 2 as well, August 25 for the opening of that one, which is, in the report it says 18 weeks from the 14th of October, so I'm looking at March for that week. So if there's any update, it'd be good to hear it, but I can imagine it's just as frustrating for you officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. And Dan, did you want to pick that up, or Jane?
I think I answered.
Yeah, brilliant.
Diane Chorister, Head of Children's Services. In regards to delay, there's a difference between, I'm just explaining this, there's a difference between finishing the development and opening the home, because obviously there's two processes running along, number of processes running alongside, which is the identification preparation of the children. It's about getting our home up and running, because obviously we've got to either commission a care service or we've got to employ staff, train staff, get the right people. We've also got to get the home registered with CIW. So there's a number of processes that runs alongside the build. What we have is a proposed timeline for opening a service. So for the Caldecott property, whilst there's been a level of delay potentially with contractors, the property will be finished accessible on the 4th, which was our deadline, the 4th of October. So the delay has been frustrated, but I think it is that thing where we are in shortage of contractors, they're managing a number of contracts, so they have a deadline. So the property will be ready for the care service to go in, start furnishing, doing the last bits as the children are prepared to bring them in. In the same way with Monmouth property, we have a deadline for finishing completion of the build, which would be in line with the grant, which is the end of the financial year. So we have to have it spent by then. So, and lots of things come up within that time, dependent on, as it would with, if we were building at home. But we have a deadline to meet, and we're pushing the contractors because we have a deadline for the building to be handed over, because obviously the preparation and support for the children to transition is such a large thing itself. So we are satisfied that we are working and contractors are working at the speed they can, because obviously the preparation of the children and the transition, because they are moving home, new people, new service, is more. So we are satisfied. In regards to the third property, which is a Pobble property, the challenge is working at their deadline, because they are the people who will be accessing the grants, and we will be basically leasing the property from them, but they are taking all the risk in regards to the funding of it, the modifications, and we work alongside them in partnership. We wish it would be quicker, and we are constantly looking for appropriate properties in order to move our agenda forward.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Howell. So in a nutshell, I think it's unlikely that any of those target dates will be able to be brought forward, just because of the sort of the complexities and the parallel processes going on. But thank you.
Thanks, Diane. I thought there'd be a good reason for it, and thank you for explaining it. Thank you, Chair.
It's an important area, and just for clarification, that presumably means that any young people who would be coming to those to be open properties are currently out of county, placed wherever that might be. Sorry, Jane.
They're in a range of different placements. As we've always said, this is about individual, planning for individual children. So and it's quite a dynamic process. We do have children in mind, but sometimes that changes. Other children come in. It's a sort of constant. It doesn't remain static. But we have a range of children who may be tracking towards these placements. There'll be a number of different arrangements currently, depending on their age and whatever placement they had originally.
And matching.
And how they match together, of course. Diane's made a really good point. So it's not a sort of, it's not a linear process, it's dynamic. We're constantly having to sort of plan and work our way forward. It's not an easy answer to where the children are now, and some children will come in and out of scope for those particular projects.
So realistically, it's probably into next year before they will be fully identified, closer to the time.
For the supported accommodation, it will be this year, and next year for the other two projects.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, for the supported accommodation, the transition work has already commenced. The children have been identified, because we're sort of 6 weeks out, so that work's already commencing with the young people.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And Mariam, was there, Councillor Howes, is there anything else that you'd?
No, thanks. I only say it's good to hear that that you are not vetting, but making sure that these children, I guess, get along with each other. They're going to live in a house together, so it's good to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really, really helpful. So Councillor Jones, you're next.
Oh, thank you. My question is about the grant situation. I note that an HCF grant of £1,175,000 was approved by the RPB, or the Regional Partnership, and a further application has been made to the RCF for what was it? £112,000, so on. But my concern is an HEF grant for, my concern is for the £45,000 grant, which has been submitted, which if it doesn't, this is to the RCF. If this isn't granted, then the comment is that the Children's Services will bear the brunt of this. And I just wondered what on earth the knock-on effect will be of this. because it's to support the Caerphilly technical team. So will that be an ongoing issue?
Councillor Jones, could I just thank you very briefly? Could you possibly just explain the acronyms to any residents watching?
Yes. Sorry.
So ICF and HCF, just so that anybody watching knows. And if we could avoid acronyms, it'd be great. Thank you.
Well, please put that, make that noted. An HCF grant, I have no idea, because it's in the report as an HCF grant.
I'm sure Jane or Diane will explain that.
RCF grant is the Integrated Rebalancing Capital Fund, and so you have to ask about the.
Okay, thank you. Diane, perhaps you could clarify.
In regards to the grant for the 45,000 to pay for the Caerphilly technical team, that money is actually already encompassed within a grant. So we're within the original grant, so we have enough money to pay for that. The reality of that will be, though, in negotiation with the Regional Partnership Fund, they said that we could apply separately for that, which would release up some of that initial grant, which would go towards potentially all sorts of things in regards to the home. So we're aware that there are a number of grant funding schemes. We're in negotiation with the partnership board, and it's about how we spend that money and where we're able to get funds from to pay for that. So that was already accounted for in the original budget grant application.
Thank you, Anna. Jane.
I just wanted to explain the acronym. So the HCF is the Housing with Care Fund, and the IRCF is the Integrated Revenue Capital Fund. So it's a capital fund that supports revenue projects.
Brilliant, that's really, really helpful. Thank you, and thank you, Diane. Councillor Jones, were there any follow-up questions that you may have?
No, I'm really pleased with that answer, Diane. Thank you, because it means that it won't have a really detrimental effect if a new grant doesn't come through. But that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Strong.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, my question's just been dealt with through what Councillor Jones asked, so I'm happy now.
Great, thank you. And Councillor Buckler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jane and Diane, for this report. It's, a huge amount of work has gone into it, and it shows the sort of care and compassion that this service has for the residents and children of Monmouthshire. Regarding the purchase of homes and residential homes for children and young people, what is the structure to make sure that in the purchase of these properties that there are, the benefits for the young people and value for money are being adhered to? And on that, what is your way of going about it? Because, some seem large to residents of Monmouthshire, and they'll be wondering sort of why. So it would be very good to have some sort of clarity for them. There is a sort of reliance on grants, it seems, almost totally from what we're reading and hearing from you about purchasing these properties. Is that the way that that this service will be run, that it will be a complete reliance on grants? So if you could elucidate on that. Now, obviously the change from for-profit provision to in-house is, I'm sure, a complicated thing to negotiate, and understandably, to sort of save on costs and also have more control is a laudable thing. But what concerns do you have in the transition because of this sort of deadline in 2027 of it being illegal to have a for-profit provision? Are you talking to the current for-profit provision providers? They've got a wealth of experience. I mean, I'm sure there are extremely good ones and there are ones that are not so good. But are you encompassing that? And one particular thing, which is care leavers transitioning to independence. Do we have a programme of mentorship within the county, alongside council officers, that we can offer these young people, spreading the net really, because we know that young people, leaving a sort of a family environment, it's difficult enough transitioning to being an adult, and I wonder if there is anything in place or could be in place to help those children at a vulnerable stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckler. Jane, Dan, would you like to pick this up?
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. I think I've managed to make a note of the questions, so I'll take them in turn. So firstly, the question over the choice of purchase around residential children's homes. There are a number of factors that we need to take into consideration. There are physical requirements under the regulations that have to be met. So children's rooms have to be of a particular size. There has to be sufficient room for communal and recreational activities. So in some senses it does seem maybe larger than a 4-bedroomed house that you might go ahead and buy for your family, because there are additional requirements. There will be support workers, a staff team working in there. They're not children from the same family coming together, and the house will need to be registered under CIW. So although in one sense it's a normal family home, that's the atmosphere that we're trying to create, there are certain specifications that we need to bear in mind when we're deciding on the purchase. And the other factor is around the location. We want, for the majority of our children, some of whom will need residential care, we want these locations to be well within the heart of their communities, walkable to school, accessible to college if they need public transport to get there, not sort of out on a limb somewhere. These are locations where we want children to develop independence, being able to walk into town, being able to walk to their clubs, whatever it is. That's where we want these houses to be located. When we go about setting out a proposition to purchase, we go through a careful business case approach. So all of the purchases we model through the cost, the likelihood of achieving grants to support the capital purchase. We go through the revenue process around the children that would be in scope for this, the revenue costs that are currently associated with those children, and we lay it out in business cases, which then go before Cabinet to try and ensure that value for money is achieved. And there's a second element to that value for money, in that when we do apply for grants, the capital grants are under the eye of Welsh Government, as well as our local regional partnership board, and believe me, they don't get through if Welsh Government or our first stage RPB regional partnership board don't consider it to be value for money. And we have had an example of a potential purchase that was turned down just for that reason. The cost of the purchase, together with the refurb costs, made us discount it because there was no value for money within it. Sorry, and we get an independent valuation when we go ahead with the purchase. So those help us assure that value for money is maintained. The second question was around the reliance on grants. We rely on grants for the capital, or rather I should say we pursue grants in any capital purchase, and there is a significant amount of capital money that has been put forward under the Housing with Care Fund and the IRCF, which is the capital fund under the partnership arrangements. So, and one of the priorities within the regional partnership capital grant application process, one of the priorities is the supporting the eliminating for profit agenda. So we've been fortuitous in our development so far that we've been able to draw on capital grants to support us with the purchase. The revenue, we're not reliant on grants. The revenue aspect of it is brought about through the revenue costs that were already associated with the children that we're talking about. Moving forward, we will continue to make applications for grants. If we're not successful, we would be looking at the modelling that through prudential borrowing through our business case. So there'd be an extra pressure on ensuring that we had a really good business case around the revenue costs such that it would support the costs of borrowing as well. So far we haven't been in that situation, but as all local authorities are pursuing these sorts of capital development, that the access to grants may not be guaranteed into the future, although we understand from Welsh Government that there has been little draw on the IRCF because of the application process. So there is still some pots of money available for our capital programme, but we'll just have to take that step by step or with each project. The next question concerned the risks. It's a really, something that is a really good question. What are the risks of transitioning, to an in-house model for the provision of residential care and supported accommodation? And they're not. It's insubstantial, the risks. This is our Monmouth development is the first time that we'll actually be looking to stand up an in-house residential team. There's no, although we'll, do some really good recruitment campaigns, there's no guarantee that we'll secure the workforce that we need. It's a big step forward for the authority to become a registered care provider of a residential service for children, although we have experience of that in adults. We have good partners around us. We have some experience already of providing children's homes through commissioned models, and we've got a service manager who, with a really good level of experience of delivering these projects, newly appointed in the service, to really help us manage some of the risks that will be associated with these projects. We've talked previously around engaging with near neighbours to try and smooth the transition of a house next door to you suddenly becoming a residential children's home. We've talked about how we, will look to manage our transition into developing our own workforce, and the risks that are presented to individual children in terms of moving them from one placement, which Diane talked about, moving them from their existing placement into a new placement, making sure that the matches are correct, making sure that we've got the right children within scope. So all these are things we are sort of managing as we go, and we do have good relationships and partners that we can draw on. We've got Newport and Caerphilly have already developed their own children's homes. We've got really trusted partners who we work with already around Action for Children, around Pobble, all of whom can really help us in this journey. Less so with the for-profit providers, but obviously that gives us sort of insight through a different lens, and because of our commissioning arrangements with those providers. So a number of risks to address, but we are giving those careful thought. And the final question was around the mentorship for care leavers. Care leavers, they do have good support through the council services. They all have their own individual personal assistant allocated to them, their PA. I know that the question was more about the support that's found outside of the council, and I think that is harder to achieve. What I would say, we have a really good group of care leavers who we try to really facilitate that sort of peer support. PAs work hard to try and do that as well, and I know it's something through the corporate parenting board that we've tried to facilitate as well. That means trying to give these young people opportunities to come together, to share social experiences together that we can support, but actually trying to look at external mentorship outside of the authority is hard, but I know that Diane will come in and say a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Diane?
Just within the service itself, one of the developments that we've been able to progress is where we talk about the planning for leaving care, where we start that real consideration for young people. Earlier it was 16 before, it's now 14, because what we want to do is work at the pace of the young person, but also develop their links into communities, develop their links into education and into training, expand their social, as well as perhaps revisit wider familial or back with parents, people who perhaps haven't had a great deal of contact with the young person, because we recognise that young people leaving care do need support, do need mentorship, and need more than our statutory offering in regards to the personal assistance, even though they're brilliant. So we are starting that process now for our young people earlier, so we can work at their pace and follow and support their lead in re-establishing networks, making connections, looking at employment training, what's good for them and where they would like to be. So we're having those constant conversations over 4 years in order to get their progression out of the service to be a little bit more seamless, less reliant, less lonely, and make them better citizens, make them more embedded in their communities. So that's an approach that we've adopted in children's services to support exactly this issue.
Thank you, Diane. Just related to the part of the question which is about criteria for locating local authority maintained home, what role and what possible powers do we have if a private provider were to open a home in a location that we believed was simply inappropriate? You know, for example, not on good public transport links, without any easy access to facilities, town centres and so on. Just wonder if you have any comments on that.
Unfortunately, we have little control over that. We are not part of the registration process. That's undertaken by CIW. Care Inspectorate Wales, sorry, under the... they have their own regulations and requirements for the criteria that they look at when opening a children's home. And some children's homes, depending on the statement of their purpose, you know, we have children's homes that aren't in the heart of of communities as well. Some children do need slightly more remote location. So it really depends what their statement of purpose is, and it's up to the CIW, the Care Inspectorate Wales, as to whether they register or not, and we have little control over it, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I just thought that people might be interested in that. I'm going to move on now to, sorry, Councillor Buckler, was there anything else that you content with those replies?
No, thank you very much, Jane and Diane. Really good and interesting information. Thank you.
Councillor Pavia, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The development of in-house residential care placements is something obviously this authority hasn't done for some time, so there is a level of expertise, capacity and muscle memory that needs to be developed. I can see in the report that we utilise technical resources from Caerphilly County Borough to assist us with one of the residential projects. I could also see that a new member of staff, Scott Hereford, the author of the report, came into the authority at the end of the summer, bringing expertise and capacity into the council. But just thinking about what the council needs moving forward, is it possible to highlight the various technical elements that need to be considered in taking these projects forward? So in terms of asset identification, purchasing, planning, commissioning, project management, registration, is Scott's role just to sort of coordinate and manage that, or will he be helping to build the knowledge and know-how within the council to do that work? I suppose I'm just trying to understand what internal capacity will be required moving forward, and whether we will be developing all that capacity ourselves, or whether we'll be reliant on regional partners and other additional external expertise moving forward. Just thinking about potential future partnerships, because we've obviously got some other projects that we want to consider moving forward. what does the current not-for-profit market look like within the region at the moment, and what is the appetite, because we've obviously got a relationship with Pobl on one of the projects. What is the appetite from other social registered landlords in this part of South East Wales to potentially come into this marketplace in the future and partner with us and with other projects? And finally, just in terms of the workforce, I think Jane highlighted some of the risks there, and I suppose just trying to understand, again, in this part of the South East Wales, is that workforce there to recruit, or I suppose moving forward, are we looking to take workforce from private providers as they potentially might exit the market? Is that where that dearth of recruitment is going to come from? And I suppose, what is the risks in terms of workforce pressures in other parts of the sector if we do that? We take that provision from providers at this stage early on. Is that going to create a capacity issue in other parts of the sector? So those are the questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Pavia. And over to you, Jane or Diane.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, really good question. So in terms of the technical and knowledge build aspect of Councillor Pavia, your question. So Scott, firstly, is with us permanently. He does bring that experience. He has been involved in these projects before, so it's a really good appointment for us. We're very, very pleased to have Scott join our team. His main priority at the moment is to deliver these projects, but very much in partnership with the rest of the service. We always try and look for an integrated approach wherever we can. So we've got our service managers and team managers working closely to identify children, and we've got Scott from the other side of it. But working alongside of us, we have our colleagues from Newport. Sorry, I should rephrase that. Our regional colleagues who were employed by Newport to help the region over this period. So they're on a time frame, but they've really supported us in developing that knowledge and expertise that you've described, Councillor Pavia. So they were a team of, I think it's about 4 or 5 individuals working across the region into this specific area. So they've been able to sort of do knowledge exchange across councils and bring their own perspectives, and they've supported some of the on the ground doing work, such as identifying potential properties and just doing that sort of oiling the wheels in the background. But I think through their involvement and through now Scott's addition, and because of our previous experience of working in partnership with providers around specific existing homes that we already have, it's really helping us to really build that knowledge. I'm not saying that it's not been without its challenges, and we're certainly not there yet, but there is a level of knowledge within the service that is really now starting to sort of bear dividends. There's been a level of knowledge growth, I should say, within the service, which is now bearing dividends. And we feel, when the regional service comes to an end, we are in a position to stand on our own 2 feet and continue to move forward with these projects. And the other aspect of it, from a technical point of view, is of course the estates element of it. Again, the estates, our internal estates partners have learnt with us along the way. They, through the development of a pre-existing children's home, out in sort of Port Stewart area, that developed a lot of learning in terms of how to develop a property such that it will meet the standards of the registration requirements, and also be of a standard that would provide a very bespoke placement in that particular instance for a particular child. So that knowledge has grown from estates as well, alongside our knowledge within the service, and we've developed a really good and effective partnership arrangement with our estates colleagues. We looked at Caerphilly technical team, they have experience also of taking these projects forward. But really, the reason for that was a capacity issue rather than a lack of technical knowledge. But it's just, again, fortuitous that we're working with another team that gives us another opportunity to learn and gain confidence in how we move these projects forward. So in that sense, yeah, we're still learning, but we are building forward. The appetite in terms of our not-for-profit providers, I think this is certainly really part of a national discussion in some respects. I think as much as it's a local authority issue to step up provision, so it has been for our not-for-profit partners, and I think they are also going through that rapid requirement to expand, and it is very, very challenging for them. So I think that they are limited by that requirement to expand so rapidly, and the same constraints that we are finding. So I think in terms of the appetite that not-for-profit providers have to really step into the county is constrained at the moment, but hopefully will build over into the future. And of course, I know this is beyond the scope of the report, but that also affects for-profit and not-for-profit providers of fostering placements as well. So it's a bit of I think we're just in uncertain times, and it's all a bit unknown at the moment, which in many respects is why we've taken the sort of bull by the horns and got on with it ourselves. And the final question was, the risks around workforce and recruitment. I mean, there are certainly risks and challenges in that area. I think there is a movement through residential childcare workers. It's not, I think it's unlikely that in any sense of scale, workers from for-profit current providers will move to us in the near future, as the landscape shifts and change, moving further towards the 2026 in terms of registration of new providers. That there may be workforce opportunities for us to capitalise on there, but I think it's just going to be a hard slog through really selling our unique position as an in-house provider with really good campaigns, with that sense of working for an integrated service with social workers who know the children really well, who are working from a value-based perspective. Those are our unique selling points, and we hope to be able to attract workforce on that basis. And we have really good terms and conditions as a local authority employer. So hopefully we've got some sort of ways of selling ourselves as a great place to work and a great service to work for when we come to set up our residential in-house provision. But there's no guarantees, and I know there's going to be challenges along the way.
Thank you, Jane. And just on the interesting aspects of the capacity, which can sure all recognise is so important, and the experience, the additional capacity that you're describing regionally, was that all included in the original business case? Because what we were looking at yesterday was just significantly, as you know, you were at the meeting, about the significant financial pressures on our services, and it's just for the avoidance of this becoming an additional pressure. Anything that you can clarify on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we built in the additional costs of a service manager into the first two business cases as part of the revenue. The ongoing revenue costs.
Good, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Pavia, are you content with the responses? Thank you. And over to Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jane and Diane. Most of my question that I wanted to ask has already been asked by Councillor Buckler, and you've answered that. But there was just one small point that I wanted to add to it, if you could just be clear for me, that the movable placement situation, I completely understand, and I'm also completely aware of how very difficult it is to get a match right when you're talking these numbers. And I'm also aware of the potential cost savings here, but are we considering bringing any young people back into county who might be in a settled and successful placement, and particularly where their needs might be very complex. I'm moving along the lines of, if they are happy and settled and successful in that placement, you might be bringing a disgruntled young person back, which might have a significant impact on that on the matching in that house. So I suppose I'm asking, obviously there are lots and lots of factors to take into account in that match. Would we bring somebody back into county who was settled and successful?
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Dan.
Each child is considered on an individual basis. So we look at a number of children when we're looking at the homes we are building, but running alongside that is that process where we've got children's social workers working with children. Every child who is looked into after for this authority has a plan. If they're doing well, they've got complex needs, and we've got a number of children we aren't even considering bringing back into county at this moment because of the complexity of their needs. However, when I talk about that 14 plus development of services, what we're very aware of, if we leave children, for sake of example, in Shropshire, that when they're 18, they won't be entitled to housing, they won't have networks in Shropshire, they will have been living in a residential home, primarily with the adults involved with them being paid professionals. And we know that's something for young people leaving care that is very difficult for them, that the only adults who care are paid professionals. And they don't have the capacity, and we haven't given them, that experience hasn't given them the right networks in a community, and certainly a council in Shropshire would not be responsible for helping them locate accommodation and ongoing support. So every child has a plan where we think, how are you doing? What therapeutic input are you having? Does that need to stand? Would we need to keep that placement? Alongside, what are your plans for the future as you transition out of care, formal care? What does that look like? So we can do work with young people to consider what's in their best long-term interest. So it's all a balancing act. But at this point, we have a number of children who, whilst we social work with them, they're not on our list for consideration for our properties at this moment. So I hope that answers.
Thank you, Dan. That's very helpful. And Councillor Riley, it looks like it's a very full answer.
Yes, thank you. I'm really quite impressed by that and how it leads into the previous discussions we've had about transitioning and housing and all of those things. So that was a very helpful explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. It was a very interesting insight. Moving on to Councillor Bond.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Jane, Diane, Ian and Scott. I just want to make a comment, really. As Jane said, it's a great policy by Welsh Government, supported by good sense and logic, and great news and benefit, of course, to the children and young people and to our budgets. And well done about the hard-won progress and employing a very experienced and successful residential and resource service manager. And I also commend your approach to the needs of the children and young people and consultation with local residents. So well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Moving on to Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I think my question's been answered on the way. I think Paul Pavia brought it in his. What I was concerned about was how much difficulty do you have getting people of the best qualities to help with these when they're in those homes. You know, do you have problems getting people, or have we got a lot of really good people in this place?
Dan?
We are blessed and cursed by geography in Monmouthshire. However, we are finding that we're having interest from people in Bristol and in England. So we are quietly confident. Everybody is, as we said, it's a brand new service for us in-house. However, we have a service manager who has an experience of identifying the right people as opposed to the experienced, as alongside the experienced people. So there will be an element of growing our own, developing people who've got the right value base alongside people who've got good experience. So that's where we, as Jane said, hopefully our unique selling points in Monmouthshire will shine through as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. And finally, Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of say thank you to the officers involved, and obviously as part of the corporate parenting panel, we've had lots of discussions with young people about, you know, how they see their lives and their futures, and how we can, as corporate parents, support that. Can you just enlighten me how much input some of those young people have had in the development of the properties? I think they were quite keen on getting involved and actually sort of co-producing, co-designing some of the sort of fabric of the potential homes. And also I just want to explore the potential career development of these workers coming to work for Monmouthshire, coming to a new service development, and it's from sort of personal experience really. A lot of social workers actually start their careers in residential work, and so how are we going to support these new people coming to our county to work in our children's homes, you know, post 16 or whatever, to actually progress their careers, and actually then we welcome them as qualified social workers within our county? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong, and we'll be, I think, very much focusing on some of this in the next report as well, where part of the report describes those young people who are not in education or training or employment, and we'll be interested in that. But this very much is specific to this, care homes themselves and residential care. So Dan, and I think if we could keep the responses reasonably brief, it will allow us to make progress through the meeting. Thank you.
In regards to young people, there's a young people's panel. There's a number of different young care leavers. They've been involved in the recruitment of Scott Hereford. They've been out to see the Caldecott premises. They've been involved in a lot of the discussions. We have plans for future integration of the young people in all of the projects, but that's certainly a project that we have ongoing for young people to be involved, both young people who are currently cared for, but also our care leavers.
Thank you, Diane. And Councillor Strong, you're content?
Do you want me to pick up on the second?
Yeah, please do, Jane.
About the career
Jane's going to pick that up. Yep.
Really, really great point, Councillor Strong. And just from a personal point of view, I started my life in residential care as a social worker as well. So totally support that. And I mean, we've got a great history in Monmouthshire of growing our own. So there are, routes through, and it is a really good entry point as, residential care is a great entry point, and we really, really do recognise that, and support people through their pathways in all sorts of ways.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Strong, for those questions. So just briefly, I note in 3.5 you identified that the change in government policy direction on this from the Welsh Government, as you've put it, has led to the destabilisation of the current market and further decreases the sufficiency of the independent fostering agency and residential placements, resulting in increased costs of placement, which sounds like very much unintended consequences, and also the number of unregulated homes operating, also an increased cost. That really does sound like a combination of unforeseen consequences. Have we fed this back to government, because for crying out loud, I mean, if policy has been driven in the centre and it's causing those kinds of problems, which are at the very heart of the challenges that our council and councils across Wales face, it's really important that we make the appropriate feedback on this. But have we done so, and have there been any follow-up discussions, do you know?
There are a number of structures in terms of heads of service, directors, Welsh Local Government Association, as well as providers. There's a lot of feedback going to and fro to the government. I think the government are well aware of the dysregulation in the market, and perhaps this is a natural consequence of when you're trying to remove profit from, you're trying to remove businesses and restrict business. So it is very difficult at the moment. There certainly is a lot of feedback going back to Welsh Government.
Thank you, Diane. Councillor Chandler, maybe you want to have a word.
Yeah, just to add and reinforce to that, it is a topic that's come up in meetings between the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care and the Minister for Social Care, together with the cabinet members for social care under the WLGA, and obviously with the publication of the bill for the name of which, the Health and Social Care Bill, which has gone through and is now going through the Senate and will be scrutiny. A lot of that is comment about the importance of ensuring there is some flexibility in the process and support that's needed, and a recognition that it's the move towards eliminating profit from children's care is a principled stand, and it is one that is aimed at producing better outcomes for children. It's not emphasis coming from local authorities and cabinet members like myself is that it's not necessarily going to lead to cost savings. That's not the intention, is to save costs. The intention is to ensure better outcomes for children and a greater stability within the market for children. But that, like any transition, it's going to be a bumpy road, and we want to make sure that the Welsh Government is fully aware of what those bumps on the road are, and to make sure we get the appropriate support from the Welsh Government. But it's a very pertinent question.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. And it's fully recognising the points you're making, but I'm simply observing the comment in the report, and it very much seems like these were unplanned consequences and certainly not scheduled into the Council's working plan. Therefore, they couldn't have been planned, and therefore we need to be careful not to have retrospective thinking coming into this. It's very important we don't have increased costs and increased challenges in terms of placements themselves. However, thank you, and thank you for the questions in this report. If I may just really on behalf of colleagues in regard to the work that is being carried out in children's social care, but this extends, of course, into the work that we'll be also looking at in the next report across the whole of adults and children's social care. Just extend our thank you to every single member of staff who on a day-to-day basis go out there and they help people, they support people in their challenges, whatever they might be, and it's greatly appreciated by members of this committee, and I know others from the People Committee have joined us today. Sometimes it appears that that we're looking at dry reports, but we're very, very conscious of the fact that this is all about individuals, and it's all about the day-to-day work that our own staff that we're immensely proud of are carrying out on a day-to-day basis. And it's just to say on behalf of I think both committees, if the People Committee would allow me to say a huge appreciation for all the work and all the effort that goes into their days and their weeks. I'll move us on now to the next item on the agenda, which is I'll move that report first of all. I see no objections or problems with that, and we'll move into the item number 4, which is the Chief Officer for Social Care Annual Monitoring Report. And a piece of luck is that we have the Chief Officer for Social Care right in front of us right now. So that works very happily. And Jane, I think actually Councillor Chandler, you may want to make a few introductory comments, and then we'll move into Jane and questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll keep this very brief because this is purely Jane's report as Chief Officer for Social Care. It's a statutory requirement that the Chief Officer does an annual report. It's a very comprehensive report. It's a very readable report as well, and a very frank report. And I think it's all to be applauded. And I look forward to hearing more about it, and I look forward to your questions about it. Just emphasising, this report is coming to you as a for discussion before it goes to full council on the 24th of October, where Jane will be presenting to full council this report. So it's your opportunity to come in earlier and ask relevant questions around it. So with no further ado, hand over to Jane Rogers, Chief Officer for Social Care, for her annual report.
And just as we do that, Jane, to just reinforce Councillor Chandler's points that about the report itself, which is 96 pages of extremely good, very informative, highly accessible information, and the work that's gone into that, I'm sure, by your colleagues as well as yourself is really noted and very much appreciated. One of the issues I'm sure we'll want to do is to encourage residents right across the county to read this report, to have a look at it, and the more that we can get this to residents, the better, because it's extremely informative about all that work that goes on that most people do not see, and actually where most of the expenditure of the council goes. So it tells people a great deal, and I think we'd very much encourage people to read it and to share it. But over to you, Jane, and it may well be that you want to give us an outline of the nature of the report, assuming that we will all have read the report itself, and we'll move into questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor Chandler. It's almost hard to know how to start an introduction to this report, but I am not going to talk in any detail around the content, and more to say, that this is my third report. It feels like it doesn't feel like my third report. It somehow feels that I've been doing this job in some respects longer, and in other respects it just feels like, how can this only be my third report? It's just a strange thing to be in this role, and I sort of feel I do have to apologise a little for the length, but it is a really difficult report to bring together. There is a number of different, sort of people that I have in mind when we're bringing the report together. It's so important, I think, for members to have a really full understanding. We don't often get a chance to sort of show and tell about what we do, and of course that then has to be balanced with my own sort of honest account of where I feel we are as a directorate in these extremely challenging times. And it is that opportunity just to bring information together in a way that does allow me as the director with my report just to try and get that opportunity to stand back and, as a higher level, really think, where are we, how are we doing, where are we going, and what is the evidence that informs my considerations in that respect. I'm so fortunate to have Jenny and Diane. This isn't a sole endeavour by any manner of means. Jenny and Diane as heads of service are so important in carrying through the objectives of the directorate, and in many ways, wider than that, the objectives of the council and their teams, leadership teams under them. This is a real joint endeavour, and just in terms of like the whole workforce, the impact that what we're trying to do within social care, is a whole team approach right across the workforce. So the report, I have tried to be honest, and sometimes I do wonder that whether I'm coming across as a little bit optimistic, but I think we've got to acknowledge the scale of the challenge before us, but at the same time, we're not out of ideas. We do have plans. Some of these plans are now coming forward after some initial sort of sort of explorations around which way to go or after some initial learning, but I think both in children's and adults now, we have got some really consolidated plans that are long-term and that are sort of both challenging and innovative in equal measures, but over the next 2 years, you know, really do look to quite significantly change the landscape across social care, while still being absolutely committed to getting the best outcomes for people within the constrained resources that we have. So I think that's all I wanted to say by way of introduction, and I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jane. And I think that is the best way to deal with this, because I don't know how you would be able to summarise a report like this without having you know, at least an hour to try and do so. Jenny, just to say welcome to you and thank you for joining the meeting. I hope you were there when we were just expressing our thanks for all the hard work, and be grateful if you could pass this back to colleagues right across the services, that we really appreciate everything that they do, and we very much value it. There are many aspects, and I'm sure we'll pick on some of these that make the report accessible. One of them, I think, is the really good use of, for example, on page 22, the pictogram that just condenses a lot of information into one page and in a very easy to read way. Very helpful indeed, and I very much encourage the use of that. And I really love on page 4, the Diolch painting. I don't know if anyone's got copyright on that, but I'd quite like to nick it as just to pop into the bottom of my emails, because I don't know if you've seen it, but it's brilliant. Just a little painting saying Diolch. I don't know who produced that, but may well be one of the children that we support, I'm not sure. But in any case, over to councillors for questions, and I see Councillor Jones with your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Jane, it does seem an age since I was there with you when you wrote your first one, and I remember it well. It was fantastic then, but it has just got better and better. So well done. And to Diane and Jenny as well. It's an enormous amount of hard work, but my question revolves around the pressures that have increased since then. Enormous pressures, both in adult and children's services, and with the numbers going absolutely sky high. You know, from reablement going up from 184 to 331 packages, and still coping with it so well. I know it's a successful service. But the other challenges, over 7,000 contacts, you know, for children's services, up 21% against the national increase of 11%. And the protection inquiries, 746, up 68.8% against the national average of 26%. These are incredible figures and numbers. And my question is, one that's probably impossible to answer, is why? Why in Monmouthshire? Is it because we have such a good outfit that we are approachable and people can contact so easily? I know it's post-COVID, numbers are increasing, but numbers are increasing across the UK. It's not just Monmouthshire. So what kind of things are contributing to this rise, and how on earth do you cope? Apart from excellent management, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I don't know who wants to pick that one up. Jane, do you want to start?
I'll pick it up in the first instance. Yeah, I mean, the pressures have been are felt across the service, but I think you've picked up there, Councillor Jones, that this year that we're referring to, the most notable increased pressure was in the front door of children's services. The staff, the workforce there, the team there has coped incredibly well. It's not been without its impact, but you know, it's still standing, and we're still going. I think we were able to bring in some temporary extra resource just to help at times. But I think the key question that you've arrived at here, Councillor Jones, is what is driving this within Monmouthshire. And I think that there are a number of issues. The impact of that sort of long ripple effect of the impact of COVID and how it affected children's psychological and social development, and the long-term impact on family functioning has driven some referral activity. I also feel that there are pressures within other partners which sometimes feel difficult to quantify, but incrementally do drive more cases our way. And I think that's another factor. And I think generally, I think we've got a number of societal pressures on us at the moment, some of which are correlated with arising concerns around children's welfare, particularly the cost of living crisis, fragmented families. These aren't always associated with increased referrals, but they can be correlated with quite serious concerns for children. We've seen a slight sort of change in referral activity related to what I've said. So, we are seeing more referrals come to our front door that concerns sort of behaviour and development of children rather than per se the impact of parenting. So it's obviously is quite an interface between the two, but we are seeing that sort of increase in behavioural sort of developmental concerns around children, some of which is not in the gift of social care really to tackle always. But what we have done is set off a piece of work. We're very aware of these pressures, and we're in the middle of a piece of work trying to do a real deep dive analysis of the referrals that have come in. Because what you'll notice from, and we're doing that to try A, to understand, but B, to how we can work differently with partners that might help alleviate some of these pressures. That's due to be coming forward, I think, any time now in terms of some of the findings from that. So it will be really important to learn the lessons and help that to drive some activity around what we can do to intervene. What I would say, though, is that you will see from the figures, I hope, from the data, that whilst we have had this really intense pressure at the front door, we've still been able to maintain a more stable sort of data set as we go deeper into the service, and that also has lessons to tell us around why that is, and it might be around the type of referrals that we're getting, but also about some of the services that we've stood up at that front door to really help us protect those sort of fact that the children don't need to go deeper into child protection and looked after services. So I hope that sort of gets into the heart of your question, Councillor Jones, and I'm looking at Diane to check whether I've answered it correctly. She's nodding, which is always a good sign.
Can I come back here?
Please, yes, Catherine Jones.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, it does clarify a lot, and of course, I think one outstanding number is the 99.9% of processes within a day. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding. So well done to all the team. But I will be really interested in the deep dive analysis. So I wondered if that comes back to any meetings or scrutiny, or will a report come to us at some stage?
We can certainly make some outcomes available from it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. It will be very good to see that information when it comes through. Councillor Strong.
Yeah, thank you. Just quickly following on from Councillor Jones, I think a more deep dive look, particularly at the child protection inquiries, which is a massive increase, would be a very fruitful discussion for the future. On other questions, there's a reference to the decommissioning of Budden Crescent and the respite service, and it says the team continue to aspire to the aspirations of a high-quality, flexible respite service. Aspirations is the sort of language that we politicians sometimes use when we're, putting it bluntly, not doing very well, and we're trying not to be held to account. I'm not suggesting that here.
I'm going to remember that next time I hear that word popping up, but thank you.
Yeah, I see Councillor Chandler recognises that. What I'm really asking is, I'm aware that with the decommissioning of Budden Crescent, I'm obviously involved as using a facility in Newport. It also involved a sort of remodelling of a service because there was a change in the nature of the demand. But I'm just wondering, do you feel that we have achieved an equivalent level of service in terms of the satisfaction that the users would have felt before when Budden Crescent was up and running? And I know this goes right back before COVID days, really. Or is there still some way to go on that journey, particularly for those who feel that the Budden Crescent model was appropriate for them? Right, so that's one question. The other one relates to our offer to foster carers. It says there that other local authorities are making a better offer. Do you feel it would be the case that increasing our offer would actually result in savings, because it would mean that we would recruit more foster carers and we wouldn't therefore have to go to the independent fostering agencies, which are presumably far more expensive? Is the sort of a labour market that flexible or no? So two questions, if I may, please.
Yes, it's great questions. I think the question that I'm sure Dan and Jenny and Jim will regarding the payment for foster carers is such a sensitive one, because it can become a nuclear development. One authority increases their pay and the other one responds in kind. Where you go with it, it's a very difficult one to get right. I'm sure it's very challenging. But Jane, did you want to pick this up, and colleagues too?
Thank you very much for the questions, Councillor Strong. Regarding the first question, the language probably wasn't quite the best choice. However, members will be aware that there were a very small number of people still using Budden Crescent when we came to decommission it, and we actually have a good respite offer. There are options. We've got direct payments. People put in their own arrangements using direct payments. We have our shared lives carers, which I know is really well used. And our Sentry Cabed is fully occupied and positively occupied as well. And sort of, it meets the individual needs of that particular person and family. And we spot purchase as and when we need to as well. So it's, having lost Budden, which I know was a really valued service, it has helped us sort of move forward in terms of continuing to open up our respite offers. And I haven't heard, quite often I get things bubble up to me, but I've, dissatisfaction with respite options is not one of those areas that has bubbled up to me in that way. However, I know I've included a lot of data in my report, but I think it would actually benefit from some numbers. I'd be interested in that myself, how many people are using shared lives, how many people are using direct payments and so forth. I think that would actually be a strengthened area here, and something I will look at further. I know that we are still challenged in terms of being able to offer that full choice to people with more complex needs, some people who are wheelchair users. And previously, Budden Crescent was really the only choice, and now our only choice for those people with more complex needs is the residential respite option. So we still feel we've got further to go there. It's particularly in working alongside a shared lives to recruit shared lives carers who are able to provide respite for people with more complex needs. So there's always more we can do and further we can go. But I think I think that decision, which was a very difficult decision to decommission Budden, has not had an overall negative impact on the service. Thank you. In terms of the second question, our offer to foster carers hasn't kept pace with our other Gwent local authorities from a financial perspective. So our offer, we sort of call it, to foster carers, is made up of both that practical, therapeutic and emotional support. We're really strong on that. And then we've got our financial offer, and that's the side of it that hasn't kept up. We've been through a number of sort of debates and considerations, because it's a difficult balance. We're trying to recruit more carers, and we're trying to encourage carers to go with us rather than independent fostering agencies. In terms of being able to compete with the offer around fostering agencies, it's a difficult thing. We up ours, they up theirs. We up ours, they up theirs. We're in a bit of a no-win situation there, so we really do concentrate on the other things that make it attractive to work for a local authority. That said, we do feel we're at a point now where we really need to review that financial offer to see if we can strike that sweet spot between providing enough financial assessment incentive for carers to join us without it being sort of, I can't find the expression, but it feels like sort of throwing money at something which actually won't solve the problem. So it's a difficult deliberation that we're going to have to go through, but it's something that we will go through over this next period as we move into the sort of budget bill for next year. It's something that we're going to have to really turn our mind to, but it's getting that sweet spot is really difficult. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
And I would just say there's also more than trying to recruit. I think it's about the value foster carers feel. And that always comes down, whether we like it or not, to money and how they're recompensed, as well as the support services that sit around them to help them and the training. And I think there is something it says about how we treat our foster carers broadly across Gwent and across Wales. I think it says something about where we are. It's not just about recruitment and retention, it's about value as well.
Councillor Strong, were you content? Or?
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. I mean, I absolutely get the logic about treating our workers, whether they be foster carers or other workers in the county, treat them well. That's so important, and sometimes that can save money. And it is clearly very difficult to get that balance between spending extra money leading to the saving of money. Because you get that wrong, you've got real problems. Button Crescent. Again, thanks for that. Just so important that we keep in mind the people who are caring for other vulnerable people, an increasing number of whom are themselves quite elderly and finding that more difficult. And they are real heroes. They save us a fortune in the work they put in, and we really need to make sure that they are talked to as much as possible and their needs really taken into account. Thank you.
Really well made points, Councillor Strong. And to your point about the aspects of this which relate to the cost, is also, of course, that relates to the individual experience. That I thought it was very noteworthy and tremendous to see that on page 22, 30 children have left care to move into permanent homes, and that at an individual level, that must be, with adoptive parents or special guardians. And for every one of those young people, that must be the most extraordinary, positive experience, perhaps life-changing experience of their lives. So, it's such a key area. Thank you for the questions and the responses. Could we move to Councillor Webb, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can't get this moment to go by without thanking Jane and Jenny and Diane for the amazing work that they're doing. It's just incredible. And to say that your work is challenging, I think, is an understatement. Thank you so much. And can I just move on from what you had to say originally, Chair, when you were introducing this part of the agenda? How can we get this good news out there? Obviously in a sensitive manner, but could you possibly involve communications and perhaps some officers in trying to get some of this good news out there? Thank you so much.
Yeah, and indeed, good news, but also just the reality of what happens, I'm sure, is tied up in that, Councillor Webb.
Absolutely.
It's a great point well made. So really just wondering, this might be more for comms than it is for Jane, Diane, and Jenny. But I think you'll probably gather from a number of the comments around the room that we're really keen to extend the awareness of that report, and hopefully people actually reading it. So the more that we could do that, if we can feed that back into Cabinet as something that would be really supported, see what we can do. But it might be, from every approach that, everyone involved in community councils, that, we share it and just extend the awareness of it. This is far from being a confidential report. It's one that is extraordinarily informative. And as I was mentioning earlier, when we talk to residents, it's the area that they, unless they actually are receiving support from these health and social care services, it's one area that they probably know least about. It's not something they see, it's not something they're aware of, but we're telling them that it's where most of the revenue that the council has is actually spent in these areas. So it will be very informative, hopefully, as well, if we can extend the awareness. Great point. Thank you, Councillor Webb. I'm sure that's something that Councillor Chandler and colleagues will want to take up. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Chair. And I totally agree with what's just been said, and really we need to help residents understand why it's a big part of the budget that's spent and how well you're using that budget. Thank you. I really appreciate the delivery of all the work that has been shown in this report. Especially under very increasingly difficult circumstances, as you've already mentioned. So thank you to teams, Jenny, Jane, Diane, and everyone. Thank you. I've got a comment and two questions, if that's all right. So the comment is, really love the way that the statement, building a productive, safe, diverse and respectful workplace. That is wonderful, and you've expanded on your concern for retention and the health and well-being of your staff. So that's wonderful. Thank you for that. So my two questions are around. The first one, looking at the priority actions you've got on page 99, there's a lot of statements such as deliver system redesign, process redesign, design and implement frame new model, develop first door responses, or re-enablement pathway design. And I can see there's a lot of work involved there. And I wonder if, first of all, you've got the resource, but also because I'm a Llys member, or at least part of the council, representative of Llys, and we've had presentations about the holistic health and care pathway that an Iron Bed and Health Board are following up. And by the way, they often mention that Monmouthshire has good practice in many of these areas. I've heard that many times. So I wonder if there's a way to work with more closely, I guess you are, and whether you can reduce the need for resource. So have we got enough resource to do these very needed, but possibly ambitious targets that you've got? And the other area was, please, so that's the one question. And the other question was, for example, there's some great work being done, as I've just said, especially, for example, to see 55% need no follow-up after support after re-enablement. So that's fantastic. So that's a really good measure and result. So there's a number of questions I've got, or a number of examples. So on page 101, there's a number of cases that couldn't be resolved, possibly. It looks like CA001 and CA002 is 352 cases, but 129 were resolved. I wondered what the issues were there. And also from the questionnaires, also great results in most of the areas, so I'm just picking the ones that are around 80%. On page 103, are there common reasons for 20% disagreeing with the questions that they've got the best support? And also 105, reliable support, and they were told of changes, that's 20%. And 106, page 106 says, I feel safe, that's difference, well, 80%, which is a good result, but wonder if you know of any reasons why, whether it's people's perceptions or whatever. And also with the children, percentage of child protection conferences within statutory timescales, that was around 79.7. So I wonder if there's any reasons that you identified, or you might be picking in a deep dive or whatever that might help resolve that 20% difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. And over to, Jane, Diane, Jenny.
Thank you very much. So I can start us off. In terms of the question about do we have enough resource to deliver some of these fairly ambitious priority actions, well, I suppose the easier answer is, we always need more. The real answer is that we are trying to work with what we have. And I think this goes back to some of my introductory statements, in the sense of, it's taken us a little while to sort of consolidate around some of these bigger strategic objectives, such as the ones that you mentioned, because we've had to create the conditions to allow them to come forward. So that has meant sort of trying to redirect the resource that we have within the limits of the resource that we have. So some of that's taken a bit of reorganisation to get us to the point where we can really start to implement and deliver. I know Jenny will want to come in a little bit more around that, for example, the reablement pathway, and we're at that point now of really trying to mobilise forward. Obviously, we're 6 months beyond this report. We're really starting to sort of bring that more to the fore. So not easy, but those actions that I've set out are where I genuinely think we can make an impact and, are within our reach. I'm not saying that we're going to achieve everyone in as full a way as we can, but I've set them out because I think that's where we are. That's where we are, and that's where we're genuinely committed to taking actions. They're not aspirational. They are bedded in, in a concrete sense of where we are and where we're going. They are aspirational, I should say, but they're not pie in the sky sort of thing. The other question before I bring Jenny in was around our working relationship with LICE, and just purely coincidentally, we have LICE coming to our Directorate Management team tomorrow to have a conversation with them, just in terms of how we can sort of really bring them into some key areas to make sure that we do have that outside voice and that more citizen voice within some of our planning. I know they've been they've extended the opportunity for us to sort of work closely with them in a couple of areas. So I think that will be, great addition to our sort of overall programme of reform. And then there was, you asked a number of details around the social services questionnaire, some of which I wasn't able to pick up, but the one I did pick up was the question around why do people feel safe, and the answer was 77%, I think, if I recall correctly. And one of the main reasons is people's fear of falling. So sometimes it's not what you always think, but that was a strong theme that came out in the question, what do you feel safe or not, and fear of falls came out high in that. And I am really sorry, Councillor Bond, I didn't sort of quite know all the numbers down around the individual points, so I can't quite link them up. What I would say is I think your questions around what are the things that come in around 80%, well, what's the themes coming out of the 20%, and I honestly couldn't say off the top of my head, but I think it's a really good question, which I will go back to the team who collate the outcomes to the questionnaire to see if we can get a little bit more detail around that. It's it's not it's a questionnaire that sort of goes out automatically and we get the responses. It's not a back and forth, but I think there may well be some richer information in there that we could draw out. So thank you for that question. And if I may, I'll just pass you over to Jenny, who may be able to share a bit more around where we are with our reablement pathway and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Just to go back to the first part of your question in terms of how do we release the resource to undertake these transformational projects, it is quite challenging, but as Jane said, we're 6 months on now, and the approach that we've taken is one of inclusivity and engagement within the workforce. So we've had a couple of workshops and we're adopting a project management approach, so bringing in key people and just making sure that we maintain momentum. We're also working very closely with our partners. We're working with key people in other local authorities who've already moved forward with this project, so we're capitalising on our really good regional relationships and the expertise that's out there. It's a well-worn saying, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're bringing people in to support us with the work, so we can learn from the benefits of, we can have the benefits of their mistakes and their challenges. We're also working really closely with our health colleagues. We're making the most of our integrated structures in Monmouthshire and capitalising on the really good relationships we've got with our health colleagues, and also capitalising on that shared commitment that we've got to finding the best outcomes for people. And actually at this point in time we all recognise that the way that we can maintain those outcomes and continue to deliver those outcomes is if we look at our resource as a whole and try and bring it together so that we can support people in a way that is seamless and a way that continues to give them the best outcomes. I was interested that you picked up on the 55% figure of people who, once receiving reablement, actually then don't have a need for ongoing care and support, which is really positive. Because that means that we're maximising their independence and preventing escalation and getting them well and getting them back to living the life they had before this incident, whatever it was. But we really think that we can improve on that. And if we develop our reablement pathway, then we think that if we can get to people in a more timely way, specifically in the community, because there's lots of focus and resource on people coming through the hospital discharge process. But if we really focus our resource in the community, then we can prevent escalation and prevent hospital admission and prevent deterioration. So that's our reablement project that we want to develop, and those are the real headlines around why we're doing. We know it works, we know it's effective, and we do have good resource, but maybe it's not quite in the right place. So we need to realign what we've got, review our processes, review our responses, and some of that is around what we do at the front door and how we're able to get support to people at an earlier stage. So all of that is wrapped up in this knowledge, this clear knowledge and certainty that if we can get that right, then we can continue without additional resource to address the additional numbers and levels of complexity that we're getting through the front door. And there's no denying that we are seeing that. But as Jane said, we do have a plan, and we're all focused on it. We all know that we need to get there. We've got to be opportunistic in our approach to it. We know where we want to get to. We know how we need to get there, and we will incrementally move our resource towards it and take every opportunity that we can because we know it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you for those responses. I'm going to move us on. I'm just conscious also.
It's really good to hear that you're working with the health board and their holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I'm just about to say that I'm conscious of time and we've still got a very important report to cover. So I'd be grateful with remaining questions and responses if we could keep these reasonably brief as we move to the end of this a particular report, at the end of which I'll be planning on a 5-minute break before we move into the last of the 3 reports. So over to Councillor Buckler, but if you could please just keep responses a little bit brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your timescales. You're quite right to keep us on task. On a point of the sort of foster care allowances, actually having a foster child or children come into your life, it does often impact how much, your sort of ability to, to work at a job or, at what you're doing at the moment, and it can often have a detrimental effect financially on people who really want to do foster care, but find it it's not possible. So it's not the fact that they want more money, it's the fact that they can actually sort of manage to do it. So that I'm hoping that is going to be factored in your considerations for the going forward in what you offer as a sort of foster package. That's just something that particularly strikes me. Regarding adult services, and bearing in mind we need to keep it brief, but what would you say has struck you as working particularly well in the council, and what things have concerned you and continue to concern you, and what has a difference that has that made going forward? You've mentioned that you're doing a lot of community-based emphasis, which is excellent, and we're now 6 months on, but it would be good to know sort of what what strategies you've come from this very comprehensive report. Thank you.
So, Councillor Buckley, when you say within the council, that's within the services?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. And who wants to pick that up?
Thank you. I'll pick that up. Thank you, Chair. Working. Firstly, totally take on board your comments around foster care allowances, and we will be. That is a part of our considerations. What's working well? Well, I think re-ablement has continues to prove that it's both right for people and right for the organisation. So that's one of the things that we really want to sort of continue to build upon. I think what's working well is that we have some amazing practitioners out there working with some families in real need. I think something that's worked well has been some of our sort of oversight and controls that we've put in at a whole service level. And I'm saying that because what it's given us is a real insight into need, demand, practice, and where we can therefore support the workforce in a more tailored way around some of the challenges they're facing. So one of the things I think I've included in the priorities is, developing a training module bespoke to Monmouthshire that will really support social workers to have some of the more complex, challenging conversations around, how people are charged for their care and their financial situation, which we're seeing increasingly complex. I think partly because of the increasingly complex needs that we're presented with. I think that's. Those are working well, but they do present, so what's next? So they're working well, but they're sort of working well in the sense that they're giving us a real clear direction of what we need to do next. What continues to concern us, I think we've still got, there's so much. I mean, we've still got increased demand, not in terms of numbers, but complexity. We're seeing our numbers of people needing, more people needing residential care or care within their own homes that is equivalent of residential care, such as double-handed calls, etc. So that ageing demographic, there's just no denying it. There's no getting away from it. So again, it just challenges us into really trying to get further and further upstream. I think we've got more to do around unpaid carers and how we support them. That's there are a lot of areas concerns, but they're just a couple that spring to mind.
Thank you, Jane. And I'll move on to Councillor Strong. And again, if I could just remind us all, if we are able to keep questions and responses reasonably brief as we try and move through the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. Can I start by congratulating Jane and the team for this report. It's very comprehensive, really lots of stuff to sort of digest and go through. One of the really sort of positive things that's happened in the last year, and I guess, you know, we're looking sort of forward as well as backward, is obviously the new Seven-Park care home that some of us were there to celebrate the opening of a couple of weeks ago. And the feedback that I've had from both residents there at the time and sort of family members has been outstanding, so well done. My question is about reablement. We're talking about the front door, about getting support to people as early as we can. What is the current state of waiting lists for people actually accessing reablement and services? What is the situation with the reablement beds at Seven Park? Is that going to be sort of up and ready? What's the sort of timescales for that? And the other concern that I've had in reading the report is, and this is going off on a bit of a tangent, but learning disability. It's noted that the practice solutions report is still yet to be fully implemented. Now, I feel like we're going around in a bit of a sort of bubble, really, because we're 2 years on and we still haven't got this sorted. So what is the timescales for that then, please?
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And Jane? Or Diane, Jenny?
Yeah, so in terms of reablement, we do want to strengthen our front door response, and our front door waiting times at the moment, we've just done a piece of work around that, and we've managed to bring our waiting list down considerably. I had the figures yesterday, and I was just looking for them. We had them at each door. In the north, we haven't got many at all. Central, we've brought them right down to about 6 that need urgent responses, and in the south our numbers are pretty low, so we are working proactively to manage those waiting lists, and we have had quite a lot of improvement around some of that. But our plan really is to strengthen that front door response, so we're not putting people on waiting lists, so we've got an opportunity to respond immediately to those emergency situations. And we've got a bit of funding from health. It's called Further Faster funding, to put some extra resource in that front door and to work very closely with their rapid medical model. So the medics will be identifying people in the community who need support, and we'll be able to follow up with that reablement. So that's the plan, and that's all part of our project around our reablement transformation pathway, which is actually delivering reablement across the whole care pathway wherever you come in, and there are various points of entry. Sorry, I didn't pick up the second part of your question. Are you going to take that one? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Strong. And yes, I totally take on board your concerns around the practice solutions recommendations not being fully implemented. There have been some setbacks in terms of the development of the bases. I know we agreed the report some 15 months ago within council or cabinet. I can't quite recall, but yes, it has. It's, you know, there are delays, and that's undeniable. The Overmono base is now completed. We're just at the point of doing the furnishings. The base in Melville Theatre has been more complicated to bring forward, but we are on a time scale now that's committed to, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. I am really sorry about that. I shall have a quick look through the report just to double check it. What I would want to stress, though, on the other thing that we are moving forward with is the bringing the service together from under the My Day, My Life and the individual support services are now together under a single leadership, which has brought with it both sort of challenges and opportunities. So we are under a single leadership. The service has moved now out of commissioning in under the learning disability team management structure again, which brings a whole set of other opportunities to really make sure that these plans for day support for individuals really work in tandem with the care and support plans that are generated by the social workers. But there is still work to do, not just about the basis, but about really bringing the practice together and really ensuring that there's a really well understood sort of model of service delivery, model of care, of how this really needs to look and feel for individuals. And the other bit of work there is probably another recruitment drive, so that we've got the right people undertaking these tasks. But just to reassure as well that there has been a service operating through this. We haven't had a service on hold. The service has been up and running throughout this period, and that it's an important part. But My Day, My Life is not the only service that the learning disability team runs. It is an important part, and we are frustrated by the fact that there is still more to do to fully implement. We're still working on it, but yeah, unfortunately that's where we are. So thank you, Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Councillor Strong, and for those responses. We're moving on to Councillor Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to keep my question to one question. And just thinking about, and I suppose making some assumptions here about reading the narrative, just thinking about the management of demand, specifically in children's services, and the children and parents, families presenting now are not just presenting with reduced resilience, but in many respects in acute stress, and they would be coming in at the top end of the continuum of support, bypassing much universal plus offer and coming in at the sort of intensive intervention end, right on the edge of remedial intervention. And again, my assumption is that those interventions are not just with a child or parent, but is often across family members, because there's a range of challenges and complexities within the family dynamic. So I suppose just thinking about that early and intensive intervention space, and much of that service offer will be delivered with our external partners in a bid, I suppose, to try to constrain demand coming into the social care-led planned intervention. So how much risk is being held in that space at the moment with partners? Just be interested to understand that. And do we have in discussions with partners, and there'll be obviously contract monitoring reports, etc. What is the impact on those partners? Are we able to gauge that?
Difficult one to answer this one in a public forum, I think, but there we go. Jane.
I shall try. There are always those families who haven't come up through preventative services, and something just happens to bring them in right at the sharp end, either through child protection or even through children looked after services. So whilst we've really expanded our family support that is able to provide services to families who are right at that sort of sharp end, like you say, call them edge of care services, and that expansion has brought with us the ability to allow children to remain safely in their homes when maybe 18 months, even 2 years ago, we'd have been more inclined to bring those children into care to assure their safety. So this isn't easy territory, and obviously every child, every family is in a unique situation. But where we are at sort of high levels of risk, working in the community, we've got some fairly intensive support services and monitoring arrangements that are in place, and it would be remiss of me to not assure members that when we are in those situations, we're working with a really tight core group of partners who we are, although we're the lead agency, they are all assisting in assuring the safety and welfare of that child and making these sort of fine-tuned decisions about, whether we're still in an okay position or whether actually something else now needs to happen. And these are sometimes daily discussions that go on, and they go on at a partnership level with us as the lead agency. So I hope that sort of gets into the territory that you were,
Thank you, Jane. And it looks like, Councillor Pavia, you're content with that. Moving on then to the final question from Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jane, Diane and Jenny and Ian there as well. Like everyone here, I'd like to echo the great support that you've been offering and the great work that's been put into this report. It's so often we hear from residents of this, what do we get for our council tax, potholes and bins. This is a great story that we should really be putting out, because none of them, as the Chair said, that unless you're touched by this, you will not know that it's happening in the county. So it's really important to get that message, and whatever us councillors can do to push that, to get that story out as well, we'd be more than happy to do so. I know Councillor Strong there mentioned that the Seven View Park care home. I was fortunate to go down there, and I see it's in the report there on the open day, and the amazing work, the work that's gone into the design of it, the thought that's gone into everything that's involved in that care home. I see it's up and running now, and I'm just wondering how are the staff and the residents taking. I know there's a little bit of concern on the transition period initially, and the big question is, are we looking to do any more homes like that?
Who wants to pick that one up? Any plans?
I might have to declare an interest, because I think it's always nice to know that, maybe in the years to come, I might be needing one of those.
So, firstly, the transition was very successful, and there was a lot of work done with residents prior to the move, taking them over, familiarising them with the environment and getting them to choose their rooms and all sorts of work. And actually, I think the feedback that we've had from the staff was that they were amazed at how smoothly everything went and how quickly everybody accepted the new environment. I mean, it's such a lovely place. I think that helped a lot, and such an improvement on the previous home in terms of its layout and the fact that it's set up in terms of a dementia-friendly arrangement, in terms of the colours and the layout and the way that the care is delivered. I think most people certainly feel that it's a significant improvement, and certainly families are very, very happy about that. And of course the staff, it was a bit of a transition for the staff as well, but the staff, there was a few anxieties, there was the change, but the staff have done really well, and I think if you go there now, you think it's always been there. You would never think that it was a new home. It feels really homely, it feels really settled. And I'm sure you felt that when you went there the other day. But actually your question reminded me to go back, Councillor Strong, about the aspect that you asked about Seven View. I'm sorry I didn't mention that the first time. But what I was going to say was that the reablement pathway includes those beds within Seven View. And in order to make sure that we're utilising that resource to its best capacity, we've got 4 respite beds and we've got 4 step-up, step-down beds there, but really the opportunity to deliver reablement-focused support there. So that is very much in scope in terms of our wider reablement project. So apologies for missing that before. But yes, that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
In the second part of the question, no, it's a short answer.
We'll give you a breathing space.
Yeah, you'll be aware that the project took many, many years to come together with a very sort of strong partnership that was built over that time between the builders, the architects, the RPB, and various other stakeholders. So no, in the short term, but what we are committed to doing is to doing a really thorough evaluation of the project, both in terms of the build, the design, and the model of care, with in partnership with the RPB, so that we really can share the learning, and hopefully we're at that sort of forefront of how we actually, as a nation, provide really good quality care for older people and people with dementia.
Thank you, and thank you for those responses. Just before we break, just a couple of questions, if I may, and these are probably for replying to after the meeting, because it's just about checking some of the information in there. Can you let us know what the caseload numbers are for within children's services and adult social care, just in terms of individual, the typical caseloads, and if you can break out of that the newly qualified social care workers, just to inform us what that looks like. If you have comparative information for appropriate comparisons with other local authorities, that would be helpful, and I'm sure that's available very, very straightforwardly. Just the last one, yesterday we were looking at the number of employees within adult social care, and the number we got back was approximately 600 full-time equivalents, and the report on page 57 shows 471. Be helpful just to understand what the difference is between those two numbers. Jane, you're nodding. You might want to just immediately respond. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I did notice that as soon as we'd said it, that there was a discrepancy. So the 600 number is the overall social care workforce, and the 471 is the adult social care workforce.
So it might be
Apologies for that. Apologies.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Just the last one, which is on page 52, the incredibly important information about life expectancy, men and women, but within that, healthy life expectancy. And the more, which is, in itself extremely important, for men typically around towards 11 years of, on average, unhealthy or some complex health needs within their later years, and for women 13 and a half years. And it's probably something that we should focus on at a future meeting, to just understand as a council, what more we can do to help build prevention and resilience and awareness of this amongst our residents. It's something we're not out of kilter with other regions. That's not really the issue. It's just we have a great many people who don't necessarily understand that is likely to be in store for many people. And were they to be fully aware of it, might want to do something about it earlier. So it's probably something for us to pick up at a later meeting, but just to pull that out of the report, as it seems very, very key. So we're moving on to the last of the reports, and I suggest we take a 5-minute break, if that is something that colleagues would wish to do. I'm looking around the room, and that looks like a yes. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll regroup. Well, I make it 12:17 right now, so we'll aim to regroup, being realistic, about 12:24, 12:25. But if you could definitely not be later than 12:25, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. We'll see you in a minute. we're just waiting for everyone to reassemble. Of course, we'll do what we always do. For those who arrive late, we'll ask them to sing the national anthem when they arrive. And that tends to... John has just made it in time. We were just saying, John, anyone arriving late has to sing the national anthem. And, I hear you're a fine baritone, so, that might be something you want to do anyway. I don't know. We're just waiting for one more member in the chamber who's due to come back in a second. Thank you, everyone, for being back promptly online.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Water, please. Thank you.
We'll make a start. Actually, I'm not sure where Councillor Housley might have been caught in a conversation. So we'll make a start, and we'll move straight into item. The next item on the agenda, which relates to safeguarding. And again, Councillor Chandler, did you want to introduce this report?
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously, safeguarding is a subset of our overall work in social care, but it's an extremely critical part of our duties and responsibilities as a local authority to ensure the safeguarding of both children and adults, and would remind members and people listening that although we quite often think of safeguarding in terms of children's services terms, it applies both equally to adult services as well. Our responsibility is to ensure that our children and adults in our county are safe, and this is our annual evaluation report, which is there to both hold ourselves accountable, but also a tool for continuous improvement, because nobody can ever be content with what we do in this regard. There's always we want to ensure that we're doing the best we possibly can. So that's the purpose of this report. So I look again forward to the discussion on this, and hand over to Jane Rogers, Chief Officer of Social Care, to introduce it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. So yes, this is our annual safeguarding evaluation report. It's our sort of yearly annual task to do this self-assessment process, just to stand back and take stock at a whole council level of where we are in terms of our safeguarding practice across the council, both in children's and adult services. And as Councillor Chandler has suggested, this is such a central part of the work that is led by social care, but actually is applied to every directorate within the council. This report is not a social care report. It is a report about whole authority safeguarding. So it follows the same format as normal. We self-assess against what we describe as the cornerstones of safeguarding. These have been in place since, well, probably longer than 10 years now, and they continue to provide a really good sort of foundation. If you consider each of these areas, it gives you a broad overview of how we're performing in safeguarding vulnerable citizens within Monmouthshire. We've done our self-assessment scoring that you'll see goes right back to 2017 to give a sense of, the journey. There's not a great deal of variation, but we have notched ourselves up in two areas this year around preventative approaches and robust protection. The evidence that we use is discussed at that whole authority safeguarding group, where each directorate is represented, and we try to make sure that we provide analysis, discussion and evidence as to why we score ourselves in the way that we do. That then helps us set out a sort of action plan for the year ahead. But these are challengeable scores. They are self-assessed. We use a range of sources to really try and come up with where we genuinely feel we are, and that's very much done within our sort of we move in regional as well as sort of local and national circles when it comes to safeguarding. So we are able to sort of benchmark to a degree. But there it is in terms of introduction, so be great to help with questions. And just to introduce Jess Scarisbrick, who is our newly appointed safeguarding manager. So this is her first experience of collating a report together with myself and Diane. Thank you.
Jess, very welcome to you, and it's really good to see you here. I hope you are really enjoying what you're doing, if not particularly the grueling nature of scrutiny, but it's something we hugely value, so thank you. Looking at questions, and just as we're, okay, Councillor Bond has just popped her hand up before I was going to ask one. Councillor Bond.
Please go ahead.
No, carry on, Councillor Bond. I'll happily wait.
I was thinking that no one was going to be asking any, so I waited for a bit, but nobody. Anyway, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report, Jane, Diane and Jess. Really good report again, and you've done wonderful work, great work being done, absolutely. I wonder, first of all, when you define what good looks like, where does that information come from, please? I mean, it all makes sense and everything. I just wonder, because the wording in it is like, we ensure, we anticipate, we're trying to do, and it's a we, whereas if it was a guidance, it would be a ensure so-and-so happens, implement so-and-so, you know, that's all. That one question, thank you. You referred to it before, that's the first one. The second one is, Thinky, you referred to it before and how dependent we are on training, or how improvements we've been made with the training, and wonder when that's likely to be in place. I was interested about the links between the Building Stronger Families team and how you support the development of parental understanding and skills around all the impact, working stronger families. Sorry, that's 3, is it? And then I've read recently that the Prevent and raising issues to the Prevent, people have started to raise issues of misogyny or extreme misogyny in schools, and really in support of the Fowler SV. So I don't know whether there's some sort of improvement there. And again, I noticed that the number of your actions, quite understandably, are either amber or there's some that say are green but they're ongoing. So I wonder if there's how you feel about delivery of your action plan. Thank you. That was a lot, sorry. I thought I was on my own.
It was rather a lot. We did try and keep to around about 3, but okay, let's see if we can move through these reasonably briefly in response. Thank you. Who wants to pick up? Jane, to begin?
Thank you. I'll pick up. Yeah, the where does good, what does good look like? I mean, it comes from a range of sort of places. Obviously, we're very informed by the legislation which surrounds safeguarding, our own corporate safeguarding policy, but also our sort of our experience of working at a whole authority level around safeguarding as well. We've sort of developed that cornerstone approach over many, many years, and we've sort of just tried to translate it into what do we need to have in place to really make sure that vulnerable adults are, vulnerable residents are safeguarded. And actually, within the Regional Safeguarding Board, this sort of very, very helpfully cross-references with some of the tools that have been used, not currently, but in the past, around what makes an effective safeguarding board. You know, what have you got in place at a board level? Those are no longer used, but they certainly sort of would have been at the foundation level when we were sort of thinking about our SAFE, which is thinking about our annual safeguarding report, I should say. So, because there really is no guidance, these annual safeguarding reports that we've been bringing forward to council now over several years are not mandated. They're not a regulatory report. They're something that we've developed over the years. And actually, I have to say, Monmouthshire has led the way in some of this sort of reporting around whole authority safeguarding, probably driven through some quite challenging times, but it's actually sort of really moved our practice on. So that what good looks like is just a range. So it's totally challengeable, but that's just our sort of view of what good looks like. The question around Thinky, it really did feature in that particular section of the workforce element. We are right at that transition between moving from one way of delivering safeguarding training to a totally different way of delivering training, safeguarding training. So Thinky in itself has been implemented within social care for well over a year now. I think it's implemented right across the council at this point. So that bit of it is done, the foundation work is done, and now our activity is around ensuring that the new national standards for safeguarding are implemented into Thinky through the modules so that it's the whole system works. So we're still at that transition. It's not been helpful in that it hasn't really allowed us to pull through accurate safeguarding data because we were sort of in two systems. But I'm looking at Jess here. We've got an action plan around that work of getting the safeguarding modules onto Thinky. Six months, and so in 6 months we feel that we will be at the end of that. Moving on to how we support parents around some of the pressures that they're under. We've got a huge range of services from prevention, in fact, building stronger families that work right at that sort of community-based through to our intensive provisions around family resolutions and MIST even, all of them. The outcome is to achieve good safeguarding for children, but actually the majority of the interventions are actually directed at families and parents in many ways. Prevent. We have our Safeguarding in Schools officer, and I think actually Diane wants to come in here.
We've just put in a bid and expecting to hear in regards to a grant, just in particular around this issue about misogyny and in violence, in relationship violence within schools that's been picked up. And it would be a joint social children's services and education worker running a pilot, going directly into schools to tackle some of those. So we're hoping to hear any day soon.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to move on to Councillor Jones.
Chair, the only other one was about the actions themselves and that they're often marched this year and they're either amber or they're green, but they're saying ongoing. Are they the right actions, or is it resource again? Thank you.
Okay, briefly, if we could, Jane.
I can. Where we've marked amber, we've either brought them forward, they may be slightly altered, but any amber actions are brought forward into the current year. Probably similar to how I answered previously, the activity is really where we are working. As I said, it's whole authority. It's not just a social care resource, it's a whole authority.
And it's probably worth noting as well, Jane, that in your report on 3.6, the evaluation framework for any resident wondering what level 6 or level 4 or level 1 means, it's set out there in terms of the grading of the evaluations. Over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you. And Jane, well done, and Diane and team, for the SAFE having been adopted across Gwent local authorities. That's really good. SAFE being Safety Audit Framework Evaluation, and that was instigated by Monmouthshire. So well done on that. My question is about adult safeguarding concerns and the numbers of complaints, and the numbers of complaints in particular against domiciliary care workers. And I have quite a concern about this due to the diverse nature of their work. They often have to work with people who have reduced mental health capacity, for instance, dementia and other such illnesses. So I wonder what support is in place for them in the authority, please, because it must be awful to work in circumstances where you're wrongly accused at times, and confusion reigns in some of the places that they do work. So I just wondered what support Monmouthshire can offer.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. It's a really good question.
In regards to what we call professional concerns when an allegation is made against a member of staff, yes, it's higher and domiciliary care. But for all professionals or people in a position of trust who come into that process, welfare and well-being is a key part of that. It's a statutory process, but which looks to resolve and investigate the allegations. It's a multi-agency panel that does that, including police, social care, but also other agencies, health, the agency, the employer. And the reality is the health and well-being and fair treatment of the member of staff is a huge consideration and needs to be at every review. Make sure that that's been planned for, that our employers that are supporting. But if there's other issues around mental health or emotional well-being, that structures are in place to offer support, that's part of our statutory duty.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, was that satisfactory in terms of your question?
Yes, yeah, I do believe. Yeah, thank you.
Just if I may, before we conclude on this report, very strongly support the self-assessment work that you've implemented and the thoroughness with it. It obviously, like any self-assessment, it carries with it the question, are we the right people to be assessing ourselves? And I'm sure that's something you're cognizant of. But one aspect that might be supportive to residents looking at this. When was the last external inspection? When do we expect the next one? And to what extent do our internal assessments match up with external assessments when they come? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's no, in itself, regulators don't come in and assess the safeguarding within a whole council per se, but it's usually attached to other inspections. So I know Wales Audit assess in terms of, your capacity to deliver safeguarding within an authority. Our CIW inspections always look at where you are from a whole authority inspection point of view, and Estin also look at your arrangements over a council for safeguarding. And I would say the most recent adult and then the children's service inspection, which was I think February 24, so very, very recent. That our most recent inspection suggested that there were strong arrangements for safeguarding across the council, which does give us some sense of external validation of what we are sort of assessing ourselves to be. And I think that was I recall back from the adult safeguarding inspection in July 22 also had that sort of lens over safeguarding. It wasn't probably quite as strong as we ended up in terms of the outcome of the 24, but it certainly sort of guided some of our actions around, what's then helped us to sort of strengthen some of the areas. I'd have to say I'm not entirely sure, and we'll try to find out for you when the last time we were inspected through a safeguarding lens from Welsh Audit. But I will endeavour to find that out for you because it's a good question. And then, of course, we have got a process whereby, as a region, we do our own 3-yearly sort of cycle of bringing together the respective partners around the regional safeguarding board, of course Monmouthshire being one of them, and we do a little bit of a sort of check and challenge against each other's safeguarding practices as part of our overall regional board development. So of course you are bringing your own self-assessment into that, but it does give you that opportunity just to benchmark yourself against what other local authorities are doing and sort of do a bit of a mutual exchange of good practice around safeguarding.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, I'm less interested in the exact date of the last inspection, but more about whether there is a degree of comparative consistency between what external assessors or regulators have to say, and I appreciate that it's more limited, and what we think about ourselves. The other approach that I've suggested to other services when we've been looking at these in performance and overview is that it's great to hear that we're doing that cyclical 3-year regional comparative work, but another approach would be to invite and to also offer to partner another local authority or even two to say, look, we're doing self-assessment work. We'd really appreciate you coming in for it during the course of this next couple of weeks for whatever meetings to offer your view about, our services, and we would reciprocate by offering our own. It's actually more than anything about learning. I guess we'd agree, and that might be a good way to help the learning. But just put that out there as I've suggested to other services. But okay, thank you for that, and thank you. That wraps up our questions and the report. So many thanks to everybody for another long meeting. But I hope you agree that we've covered some incredibly important territory in today's meeting and also in yesterday's meeting. But just to reiterate and I'd be very grateful on behalf of the committees who have attended this meeting, Jane, Dan, Jess, if you would please, and Ian, Councillor Chandler, if you could please share with all the members of staff and management who carry out this work, and we probably are the most remote sort of bits of the organisation to people who are out there doing the hard work on a day-to-day basis, but it might just be good for them to know that we've expressed enormous appreciation of the work that they do and recognise how important it is. So grateful if you could please pass that through, as I'm sure members of the committee will do ourselves. So thank you for that. Drawing the meeting to close. The next meeting is actually next week, not tomorrow, you'll be glad to know. Next week on the 15th of October at 2 o'clock, and the meeting is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you.